Today we're going to talk about rotational grazing and how to do it, the benefits of it, and what our setup looks like. But first, make sure to subscribe to my channel for more homesteading content. If you have any type of livestock, rotational grazing is a really good idea for you to look into. And the number one reason, in my opinion, is for the animal's health. First, you're going to get minimal parasite issues because you're rotating your animals on different pasture, and as they're taking in parasite eggs or parasite larvae and pooping that out, it's not increasing the population of parasites, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. The other big reason to use rotational pastures is because it's going to give you the most fertile and healthiest soil. So it's a win-win. It's going to be the healthiest option for your animals and the healthiest option for your property, your soil. One of the easiest ways to do rotational grazing is with an electric fence. Make sure to check out my video on how we installed our electric fence. And what's nice about it is that it is often portable. You can move it around, and so it's a very inexpensive way to fence in your livestock and protect them from predators, and also keep them in and move them around your land. So when we first got here and got our goats, we did want a permanent pasture just in case we were unable to rotate our goats on a certain day, but not have to be dependent on rotating our goats. We like having this pasture, which is a little less than 1 acre. This fence is 6 feet tall, and I can show you the wire here. Many permanent fences fail because either it's not tall enough and goats can find a clever way to hop over, or the wire itself is either too big, they could get their horns stuck, or the wire is too flimsy and it's easy for the goats to push through. But the electric fencing takes care of those issues, because as soon as the goat feels a shock 1 or 2 times, it's not going to test its boundaries. So the way that we rotate our animals on this homestead, we've got about 5 acres total. A lot of it is forest, a lot of it is overgrown brush, which goats love. Technically, they're browsers, not grazers. So they want to be chewing on material that is like knee-high and up, and not so much the grass. But if you only have grass, they'll be happy with that too. We have 3 gates around our permanent fence. This one here has 2 sides, and the way that we're going to be moving them around basically the pasture, and also utilizing these gates so it's easy for them to get through, is every 3 days we're going to move the fence and basically split up our gates. So 3 gates, that means 6 paddocks. And of course, that's not including the main pasture area that they have fenced in as well. So every 3 days we move their electric fencing to the other half of each gate, and we move them around the perimeter of their permanent fenced in pasture. There are many ways to create your own system, but the most important thing is that you rotate them on a schedule, at least for the parasite resistance. So let's break down the parasite schedule. Eggs hatch within 3 to 5 days. So you could rotate them daily if you had a lot of land. It's recommended for cows to rotate them daily, but we're rotating them every 3 days on the earlier end of that spectrum. Once the parasite egg hatches into larvae, it does so usually through poop and on the grass, and once it hatches, that larvae crawls up on all the grassy foliage, and they can re-ingest these parasites by just eating that same grass. But if you rotate them to a new paddock, eventually those parasites will starve out. Now, parasites can live anywhere off of a host from 15 to 24 days. And so let's do a little bit of math to figure out where we would be if we rotated them around our 6 paddocks. We rotate them every 3 days, and we've got 3 gates that we're dividing up into 2. So 6 paddocks times 3 is 18 days. So to prevent parasites as much as possible, we will need to utilize our permanent structure as well, in which we could divide up further. And so even if we just divided our permanent pasture into 2, that would give us 8 paddocks. 8 paddocks times 3 days rotation is 24 days and the end of a parasite life cycle. So as a general formula, you could use that. If you could find a way to move your animals every 3 days into 8 different paddocks, then you would get past that parasite life cycle. And then if you were to do that measure, which is going to be healthiest for everybody, then you don't have to rely as much on pharmaceutical dewormers. You can use preventative herbal dewormers. When we first got started, we only used our permanent pasture. We only had 2 to 4 goats, and so they had quite a lot of space to graze on. But eventually, the parasites are going to build up. And that's led us to this rotating of pastures, which we wanted to do from the very beginning because we knew of the holistic benefits, but we were lazy. There's a few more things to consider when rotating pasture. The more species you integrate into that rotation, the healthier everyone's going to be continuing forward. And the reason for that is because most parasites are species specific. We were confused about this point when we were looking at how to rotate our animals within these paddocks, and even taking our goats outside of their permanent pasture. We were concerned about coccidia, which is a really common parasite that different species of animals get, like chickens and rabbits. But come to find out, coccidia and other parasites are very species specific, meaning there's different types of that parasite that's going to affect its host. So after you've had, for example, goats come through and drop their feces that might have coccidia in there, it's actually a great benefit for the chickens to come back after them and eat that larvae. And of course, the goats can come in, clear out a bunch of browse that's 3 to 5 feet high, and then after goats you bring in some grazers that get all the lower growth. So you bring in your browsers, you bring in your grazers, and then you bring in your scratchers like chickens that are going to scratch up the surface and try to clean up everything else that's left behind. So in a perfect system, you could have electric fencing for your browsers, for your grazers like cows or sheep, and then you could have a tractor coop and move your chickens behind them. When we first got started with our livestock, rotational grazing kind of seemed a little overwhelming to us, and that was one of the reasons why we didn't do it. But now we've come to a place where we're really forced to do it for the health of our animals, and we're excited to see how the land regenerates because of it. I hope you found this video useful, and if you did enjoy it, please like the video and subscribe to my channel for more homesteading content.